Welcome to Bed Crime Stories Podcast. I'm your host, T. Do me a favor, smash that like button and subscribe to my channel. Hi guys, I hope you're having a great day so far. The more I read the recently released evidence in the Idaho 4 case, the more I believe Bryan Kohberger was inside the girl's house in Moscow, Idaho prior to the crime. I know that people have speculated about this. There were so many incidents of doors being found open when they'd been locked when the girls left the home, a door being off the hinges at 1122 King Road, as well as bizarre incidents of somebody breaking into nearby cars and homes, moving items around, stealing one person's underwear, a female. It seems likely that this could have been the work of Bryan Kohberger, the nocturnal phantom who visited the neighborhood at least 23 times. His research into serial killers and trying to figure out how to commit murder and get away with it tells me he would not have gone into 1122 King Road without knowing exactly where the different women were sleeping. And this is supported by the belief, based on survivor Dylan Mortenson's eyewitness account, that Kohberger first went up to the 3rd floor, where Kaylee and Maddie were sleeping. I also now believe that BK's primary target may very well have been Kaylee Gonsalves. Dylan Mortenson said that she thought at first that the masked man said, quote, "It's okay, Kaylee, I'm here for you," end quote. In addition, Kaylee had so many encounters with a strange guy. One time, a guy followed her to her car in the Winco parking lot and tried to get in. On another occasion, she took her dog Murphy for a walk and noticed a guy hiding behind a garbage dumpster near the house. And then there was another time when she let Murphy out the back door and she saw a shadowy figure watching her from the tree line behind the house. And Kaylee flat out told her roommates about a potential stalker in Moscow, Idaho. None of the other girls have mentioned having a stalker. Of course, some will argue that Kaylee wasn't even supposed to be at 1122 King Road that weekend. She'd already moved out. Others believe that BK came instead specifically for Maddie Mogan. He worked at the Mad Greek restaurant along with Xana. That restaurant served vegetarian food, the type of cuisine that BK strictly adhered to. The Mad Greek restaurant actually says that it's permanently closed on its website, which seems sort of sad. And we know from recently released documents that BK's cell phone did passively pick up on the Mad Greek's Wi-Fi on one occasion, but he could have just been driving by. It doesn't mean he actually dined there. I want to talk more about some of the troubling behaviors that Bryan Kohberger was exhibiting at Washington State University, both as a student and a teaching assistant. There were so many red flags that this guy was trouble, especially trouble for females. One woman who works at WSU was interviewed on January 9th of 2023 after the crime. She said she regularly interacted with Kohberger, and I get the feeling she may have been a student advisor. Her name and her job were redacted. She said that when the academic year first started in 2022, Bryan Kohberger came across as lonely. And because she is from Pennsylvania, like BK, and he knew it, he would strike up conversations about hiking. However, as time went by, Kohberger would hang out in the hallways of the university and outside her office. She described Kohberger at this point as, quote, creepy, and he would stand at her desk and stare at her or her coworker. Imagine that, those bulging blank eyes staring at you uncomfortably. Kohberger even blocked the coworker into her desk area. He would also follow them out to their cars. There were also complaints made about his rude and belittling behavior toward females. And because of Kohberger's behavior, all the graduate students had to suddenly take a mandatory training class regarding behavior expectations in the classroom. Thanks, Kohberger. I'm sure they all really appreciated that. Now, during the class, apparently Kohberger sat at the back of the room with his hands behind his head, staring at the ceiling, clearly giving off the impression that he did not need to focus and listen and learn. Incredibly rude, incredibly disrespectful. Apparently, a total of 9 complaints were filed against him. To me, this sounds like Kohberger trying to control situations, assert his dominance, show off his aggressive personality, and behave in a borderline threatening manner. A WSU graduate student was interviewed on January 9th of 2023. She was one of BK's colleagues and worked on a project with him. She described first meeting him in August of 2022 in her office with 2 other graduate students. He also told her he enjoyed hiking and that he was studying offender decision-making and was particularly interested in how emotion played a role in how offenders make decisions. They also discussed the use of alcohol and the effects of marijuana. He told this lady that he was not a drinker and did not understand why people drank. This is interesting because when Kohberger was arrested in Pennsylvania, the authorities found a baggie of some green leafy substance in it. I assumed that was probably marijuana, I don't know. And in these documents, it also talks about Kohberger attending an event where he ordered a bottle of wine, which he proceeded to drink all by himself. We also know that when he was in Pennsylvania, he would go into the Seven Sirens Brewery and order drinks, and then harass female employees and patrons to the point where the manager had to talk to him and he never showed up after that. It's interesting that Kohberger was lying about things that most people wouldn't care about. So why lie about drinking? To what end? We know that Ted Bundy drank before his crimes for liquid confidence, and Kohberger definitely had a fascination with Bundy. And so I do wonder if he drank, Kohberger, on the night of the crime in Moscow, Idaho, perhaps to gather up courage to go in there. On the one hand, you'd think he wouldn't drink because he would want to be 100% coherent for his crime, but we know that he drove around the house several times before finally parking and going into the home after 4 a.m. So was that him trying to muster the nerve to commit the crime, or was he simply watching the house to see if the bedroom lights were turned off at some point? Now, that same student advisor, the female, said that Kohberger liked to dominate conversations, and he would also stand in a doorway and hover. Per this woman, he had a macho demeanor and he would appear puffed up. But the only thing she felt was really off about him was his intense stare. He'd stare at people he wasn't even interacting with or talking to. She said one time Kohberger was talking to her in her office and he wouldn't stop talking. Finally, she told him she was leaving because she didn't want to get a parking ticket. I'm assuming she was parked in metered parking. So she walked out to her car and Kohberger continued to talk to her. Hearing all of this makes me wonder if Kohberger focused on professors and advisors at WSU because they sort of had to talk to him. You know, they were working there and he was a student and a TA, which would be different from fellow female students who didn't have to give him the time of day. It's like he was holding these WSU employees hostage because nobody else would talk to him or want to be around him, save for that one fellow TA who expressed interest in dating him, only for him to basically gaslight her. I guess she wasn't his type. Yes, he did have a type. One woman who apparently was divorced. Well, Kohberger told her that he didn't date people who were broken. I mean, the arrogance of this guy. The female advisor said that BK was perceived by female classmates as dominant and also by female instructors as disrespectful. One woman came into the advisor's office crying because of a classroom discussion with Kohberger. She described his behavior as possibly sexist and said that he did not like being interrupted, and he definitely wanted to come across as highly intelligent. She was also told that Kohberger was stalking another staff member. Kohberger allegedly asked the other staff member out and then followed her to her car. And some of the female students were running a tally to track Kohberger's tardiness to female instructor-led classes versus male instructor-led classes. The tally showed that he was consistently late to female instructor-led classes and never late to male instructor-led classes. Clearly, Kohberger has problems with women. He does not see them as his intellectual equals. And this is odd to me because he sounds like he's so close to his mother and also to his two sisters. I read that when they have video chats with him, not only are the parents there most of the time, although it's usually just the mother, often the two sisters also are there for the video conversation, with one of the sisters suspecting him of the crime in Moscow, Idaho over the Christmas holidays in 2022. It sounds like neither one of the sisters have completely iced him out of their lives. But I do wonder if things have changed since he confessed to the 4 murders. By the way, did you guys know that 2 handprints were found on the exterior glass of the window at 1122 King Road, the window into the kitchen, after the crime? In the police files that have recently been released, it says that on the glass, police found a, quote, possible face print. They did not specify if they think the face print belongs to Kohberger or somebody else, but that he walked in and out through the sliding glass door that leads into the kitchen. And by the way, classmates of Kohberger's noticed that he had visible injuries, including bruised knuckles, weeks after he unalived the 4 college students. One female classmate described Kohberger returning to class after the Thanksgiving break with, quote, cuts on his hands that were, quote, similar to cat scratches. And Kohberger had tried to cover the cuts with bandages, apparently. Another classmate who sat near Kohberger told the cops that he had bruised knuckles, redness halfway up the back of the left hand from his knuckles, and a cut on his ring finger after returning to class after Thanksgiving. The classmate said that when she asked Kohberger about the cuts, he responded by claiming he was a boxer. Now, back in Pennsylvania, when he was younger, his father did take him to a boxing gym. That's when Kohberger got into shape and lost the 100+ pounds. Another classmate noted that Kohberger still had bloody knuckles in December of 2022. And the classmate asked Kohberger if he'd been punching drywall in anger. This time, Kohberger said that he was involved in an indoor accident. Bizarre. But another classmate shared that Kohberger told him he was in a car accident, and that person described seeing scratches on Kohberger's face and hands. And here's something also really bizarre. Multiple classmates reported seeing Kohberger wearing a puffy, heavy jacket to class for the rest of the semester, and the weather did not warrant that puffy jacket. So it seems like he may have been trying to cover things up. You have to wonder, was he up to some other shenanigans that we don't 100% know about after he committed the crimes in Moscow, Idaho? Was he possibly breaking and entering other residences of females, moving things around, stealing underwear? Let me know if you enjoy hearing about the information in these police files, and I'll keep going. Smash that like button and have a great day. Love you.